Thank you. At least somebody is online today for once, without sending an email. So, first, I just wanted to apologize that we were unable to have class as scheduled over the weekend. Yeah, I was not available. It turns out I had a scheduling conflict anyway. But with that said, I wanted to kindly ask if maybe you could confirm if you can hear me just fine, and also if you can see my screen. I've just shared my screen.
Oh yeah, you're audible and we're able to see the screen.
Wonderful. So also what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make a minor alteration to, turns out for future reference here, I refer to these items I have in my calendar as a guide. So I'll just adjust this so that it correctly reflects the fact that we had a 2-hour-long session. So we're supposed to have 2 sessions today, seeing as we were unable to have the makeup class over the weekend, but that's fine. Anyways, I'm not sure if people have had a chance to go through or to reflect on some of the things that we discussed in the most recent interaction that we had. A reminder that we're essentially still looking at those key aspects associated with management information systems, or things really that are associated with your typical information system. And what we have been focusing on so far is the upper layer, right? So the layer that forms what is quote unquote referred to as the technological infrastructure. So the key technology that you need to have in place for you to effectively run a management information system. So we started our discussion by discussing. We actually broadly looked at all those key elements, right? And then we then looked at we were looking at these individual elements essentially, hardware, software, and then more recently we were looking at so-called communications infrastructure, and really our focus of attention was on so-called computer networks. Very important, because the reason why we buy bundles, the reason why we go online is because we want to share resources. That resource could be data, it could be information. I know most of us go there to just go and extract information. We are rarely content creators, right? So we go on Facebook because we want to go and see what other people have posted, or the latest stuff that people are gossiping about in this country of ours, or something like that, right? So you go on Facebook and you are consuming content. That is possible because there is an existing communications infrastructure that facilitates that process of you consuming the data. We, during our discussion of this communications infrastructure, we touched on a number of things here, but I think what's important to highlight is this notion that there's varying types of computer networks, right? We have, PANs, or personal area networks. We have local area networks. We have metropolitan area networks. We have wide area networks. We have sophisticated things such as virtual private networks, right? And we also took time to look at some use case scenarios, right? When we may find ourselves using those types of networks. And also, during our discussion, I think we snuck in the idea of an MIS, right? In which sort of scenarios, what types of computer networks we use if we were to deploy a management information system. We discovered that for the most part, I mean, if we look at the classic case study we've been looking at so far, we discovered that for the most part would essentially need to set up wide area network. If you know, a typical social protection management information system would be used countrywide, right? If we look at Zambia as a case study, it could be any other country, really, because you expect to have people that would want to either collect data using the MIS platform or extract extract reports using the MIS platform. These people would be located in various parts of that particular country. The moment you have that sort of setup, we see that we're referring to a wide area network, right? We did mention that there are instances, special instances, where there could be a policy in place. And by the way, more on policies and procedures. More on policies and procedures here. There could be a policy in place that dictates that you can only access the management information system when you are on the company or the organization's computer network. In that instance, you have what's called an intranet. There are yet again certain instances when you may want to restrict access to a management information system within the organization, but also in addition to people logged on to the organization, other specific external entities. Then you have an extranet or something, right? And then at some point, again, we discussed, is it different network topologies, they're called, right? So this notion that the design, like how you go about designing, how these network nodes are going to interact with each other, is supposed to be well thought through, right? You're supposed to come up with an appropriate topology. We looked at some common topologies like bus topology, star topology, and the tree topology. And then again, what I did was, I think at some point, I thought this would be helpful in helping you understand. We briefly glossed over, this is a very important topic in computing, but we glossed over this notion of what's called the OSI model, OSI model, the Open Systems Interconnection model, which essentially helps you understand, it provides a specification on how information or data is transmitted over the network. So we see that when you're sending information, it starts from the application layer and then trickles down to the physical layer, from which these bits, the ones and zeros, would be transmitted over a computer network, because the information that's transmitted over a computer network is essentially broken up into packets. Those packets are made up of ones and zeros, they call it, right? Signals, right? On the other side, the opposite happens. So if I'm sending a message to you, like right now, I'm broadcasting my screen and the audio, right? My sound, because I'm speaking right now. Everything begins at the application layer, it goes down to the physical layer, and then at the physical layer, the raw bits, the ones and zeros, will be transmitted onto your respective machines. On your respective machines, those bits will first of all hit the physical layer, and then they'll trickle up to the application layer. Application layer in this case would be your browser or your Google Meet application that you're using. But anyway, so quite a bit of things that we looked at, and then we discussed some classic use cases of large-scale computer networks. I'm hoping that the conversation that we had last week was comprehensive enough to enable you fully appreciate why this communications infrastructure is necessary, why we need it in the first place. Right? So there's a lot that goes on behind this. I don't know if people, also, I thought this was nice. This is from one of the, is it recommended textbooks here, showcasing these different types of networks that we're talking about. Your local area network, your intranet, your extranet, the internet, which is a wide area network or something. You see that the extranet has other external stakeholders here, suppliers, customers, and partners in this case. In the case of the social protection management information system, extranet would comprise of other government ministries, or perhaps not-for-profit organizations or something. People that would want to gain access to the data that you are collecting. Also, I guess mobile network providers for the case of Zambia, because payments are done using these mobile money solutions offered by these mobile network providers or mobile network operators, as they're called, MNOs. I don't know if people have any specific questions about this discussion before we proceed. I'm hoping the discussion was quite clear. More importantly for us, I guess, is we are hoping that if you ever find yourself sitting in a room of people making important decisions on what needs to be done, you have something to say relative to the information technology infrastructure. I think we should set up a tree topology. We should push for the consulting company to set up a tree topology, and then you give your reasons as to why that's the case here. from cost perspective, I guess reliability and availability of the communications infrastructure also. Also important decisions like the communication media that is being used, right? Wireless versus wired connections. I think we should invest in fiber, right? Because it's going to be more efficient for us to send information across the network or something. I don't know. Or we should pay extra money so that we have a VPN that takes advantage of Airtel, right? A virtual private network. I don't know. Any thoughts or comments about that before we proceed to the next part, which is the last bit, really, the fourth layer or element associated with the information technology infrastructure? Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
These same online platforms we access, for example, the same ZSPs. So it is
Yes.
deployed using the wide area network. Then us end users, we access it using private area network. Is that so?
So no, not quite. So here's the thing, right? So there's a number of things you've raised here. You raised private area networks, wide area networks, and then the ZSPs. Disclaimer: I can only speculate as to what exactly goes on because I don't think there's any documentation in regards to how exactly the interconnection is like when you're using ZSPs. But of course, I mean, you can infer this information by probing, right? Like for instance, before I answer this question, I'll ask: when you're accessing ZSPs, can you access ZSPs when you're when you're using MTN bundles or Airtel bundles? Or
Yes.
okay, so you can access ZSPs whether you're at home or you are physically in the office, right?
Yes. Anywhere you are, you're able to access as long as you're on internet. Zamtel, MTN, Airtel. You're able to log
Yeah,
in.
I don't think it's a trade secret though. How do we access this piece? We don't ask for a password, but what's the URL? Do you have the URL? We can do a test right now. Anyway, just in case it's not, I'm sure we can get the URL somewhere. But because you can access, here's the thing: you can access this piece irrespective of whether you are at work or at home, whether you are using MTN network or Airtel network. If I was to access it right now, I'm using Liquid Telecom. I can access this piece, obviously. What that means is that this piece is accessible over a wide area network. That's the thing. So it's in essence, you can access this piece even when you're traveling outside the country, like on official duties or something. You're in, I don't know, Taiwan or Japan or something. You'll be able to access this piece because this piece is deployed on a wide area network. It's accessible via a wide area network, the internet essentially. And the obvious advantages of doing that, right? One of the fundamental reasons why such a decision would be made is because currently in the country, we haven't really solved the issue of this last mile connectivity, it's called. So this, if you look up this idea of last mile connectivity, it refers to, so you typically have, you typically have entities, right? It's like they're wholesalers or something, like Liquid, like Fibercom or something. They'll provide you with the best infrastructure. But the important question, you want to read this up, I don't normally share Wikipedia links, but that's fine as well. They'll be able to provide you with the best infrastructure. Like if you look at this, the diagram here, what they're telling you is that Fibercom has set up the backbone infrastructure throughout the country, I would like to think, but Fibercom is not responsible for providing the connection from this backbone link to your respective homes or to your offices. So other companies will come into the picture. And there's a lot of money to be made here, right? Everybody wants to go online. I don't know if there are people that think about these things here. Although it's not exactly the easiest of IT companies to run here, right? You're dependent on human resource. But but because of the last mile connectivity issue, what that means is that you have to depend on something that is commonplace. So if you look at connectivity in the country right now, we are certain that most mobile network providers, Airtel, MTN, and Zamtel, most of these have a presence in all corners of the country. So we know that at least the central hubs of these different districts or provinces will at least have connectivity, right? Mobile connectivity, mobile data connectivity. If that's the case, if you're deploying an application that is accessible via the web and is supposed to be accessed in all corners of the country, you have no choice but to make sure that it's available irrespective of the network that somebody is using. And the best way of doing that is you take advantage of a wide area network, like the internet, for instance. Right? So this piece is accessible via a wide area network, not a personal or a private area network, because by definition, a virtual private network it's a restricted space. So it's a sort of network that is it's available. It could be available throughout the country, but it's restricted. Right? I don't know if that makes sense here. I think Mr. Branton was the one who asked the question. I don't know if that makes sense. Was that explanation helpful?
Oh yeah. I was seeing it in this way. I don't know if I was understanding it in another angle. Like the server where the same Z species is deployed from, they use a wide area network. Then as end users, since we're using, for example, MTN internet, it's some sort of person area network where you say that you can use a router and those things. So I'm seeing it from two ends. So I was seeking clarification and confirmation on that.
Right. I mean, great question. It turns out so here's the thing. If you remember what we were discussing, there we go. When you're accessing this piece, right, the high level architecture of what's happening is like this. One of these is your computer, your laptop. You are using this laptop to access this piece, which is located on a server. Now, if you're in Kasama is on a completely different part of the country, right? If you look at where you are and where the ZSP server is, let's assume the ZSP server is in Lusaka. You're in Kasama. What we are saying is, for you to access ZSP, both by you here, I'm talking about your computer here. You are the client, right? Your computer. For you to access ZSP, you, which is this laptop or this phone or this desktop computer, and the server have to be on the same computer network. And in fact, this is the same for any type of service or web application you're talking about, right? For you to access, this server could be Facebook. For you to access Facebook, you and Facebook have to be on the same computer network. Now, so go back to the issue of this piece. For you to access this piece, both you and this piece have to be on the same computer network. Because you are located in a different geographic location from this piece, this computer network that you and this piece are on is a wide area network. And as luck would have it, this wide area network we're referring to is essentially the internet, because we have asked what sort of networks you'd be on for you to access this piece. You can be on Airtel, you can be on MTN, you can be in South Africa attending training, you'll be able to access this piece. Hey, there's a security concern though, right? if every Jim and Jack can access this piece via the web here, you're increasing the relative number of attackers that might want to infiltrate your server, right? To steal whatever information you might be interested in stealing here. So the network we're talking about is relative to why exactly you've set up the network. In the use case you've mentioned, it has to be a wide area network. But if you are, so this is this piece. But if you are at home and let's say you're not interested in accessing anything on the internet, but Well, you're at home, maybe there's you, there's mom, and there's the kids or something. Child one, or I don't know if kid or maybe it's child one or something, or the child two, not kid. But so there's these 4 people, and let's just say the child has a movie, or dad has come back, because dad has friends who share series or movies with him. He's come back with movies, and you want to share these movies with maybe mom and the 2 children here. What you can do is you can set up a personal area network. Right? This is like it's a personalized area network. It's just going to be restricted. Well, one would argue maybe it's a local area network or / personal area network. Anyway, you can set up this without really connecting to the internet, because when you set up this network, everybody will be able to access whatever resource you want to share, which are the movies here. And we do this every time, right? Although most novice users will use this as a hotspot. Oh, my hotspot is now accessible. If you want to access the internet via my hotspot, just connect. Here's the password. But what you can also do is you can set up that hotspot without really connecting to the internet, and enable other people to get resources that you want to share. Could be movies or files or something. I don't know if that makes sense here. Is that helpful or something? Maybe we can have another local area network, right? We can have a local area network. Yeah, here's the thing. When you're, sorry, Mr. Brandt, you're in Kasama, you said, right?
Yes.
Right. So in Kasama, right? You're in Kasama, in the Kasama regional office here. I don't know if you have IT, I'm sure there maybe there are times when, now these days, right? It's quite sad, really. It's quite strange here these days, because what people do, right, is I'm in the same office building as you. I want to send a file to you. What do? I will email it to you or something. Or I have shared it via Dropbox, or it's in my shared Google Drive. You can access it from there. And we can get away with that because it turns out that internet speeds have become incredibly fast. But a more optimal solution is you don't have to, because when you're, here's the thing here. I'm just going to go back here. Hopefully this will make sense here. If I'm sharing, if I'm in Lusaka, well, you're in Kasama, and you want to share a file, and you say that file you've put it in Google Drive. What that means is, for you to put it on Google Drive, you have to leave Zambia, go somewhere in Cape Town, go through these underwater sea cables, and go to wherever the Google Drive servers are. There's redundancy here. They could be in Europe, in North America or something, or in Asia, right? You do that. The other person who is again in Zambia, for them to access that file, and this is happening at lightning fast speeds, right? Which is why we take it for granted here. If your colleague who is in Kasama wants to access that file, they have to again leave Zambia, right? Not literally leaving Zambia here, but they're leaving Zambia, going through these underwater sea cables, and then getting the file here. But the question is, or the argument would be, if you are in where's Kasama here? If you're in Kasama here, why not use the local area network, right? Because what will happen with the local area network is that you'll be able to share the files right within that localized network without wasting time or wasting resources, actually. But we take these things for granted. And I think you've noticed this. For larger files that are shared on the local area network, you can actually download them at a much faster rate than if you're downloading a file from Google Drive or Dropbox or something. You understand? So in the Kasama regional office, if you have colleague 1, colleague 2, and maybe colleague 3, and they just want to share files, work files, you are better off doing this on a local area network. By the way, the reason why you are doing this on the local area network is the single point of failure issue is taken care of. What happens when there's no internet access? If you're reliant on services like Google Drive and Dropbox, well, people won't be able to access these files, right? Which is why you have these local area networks. And I'm sure your IT in some of your offices, I don't know, please let me know if you are such an organization. I'm sure IT has told you to say the important files are in this shared folder or something. There's a shared folder, like a network folder that everybody has access to. I don't know if you do these things here, but is there any organization where you have like a shared folder that everybody in the office has access to on the network? Or maybe you use Dropbox and Google Drive or something. No. All right. Hopefully, I mean, this helps you to better understand these things, because things have become so fast. Here's the thing. Maybe we can, let me show you something here. Maybe we can do, maybe this will help you understand things a lot better. Let me see if we can trace network root online or something. Let's see if we can find a nice visual trace root so that you understand what's happening here, right? And I wonder if we can find a map. Let's see. Let's start with right now. If you notice my Wi-Fi connection here, I'm connected to a Liquid Telco network, right? And what I'm going to do is I am going to attempt to, let's see if we can do a simple test here. I'll say I want to access, let's start with the easy stuff here. Let's say I'm going to say www.unza.zm, the Unza website, right? I'll test this. I hope there's a map here. I don't know if it's going to, maybe if I check trace root network group map, online map. Network online map. Let's say trace root. I'm trying to see if we can find, because this is not very helpful. If you notice here, I don't know if you can see where is this coming to? This is wrong here. This is very strange here. If you notice, there are some country names here, right? But this is wrong here. Let's try and see if we can find a map, a nice map here. I know there should be some very nice, maybe geotrace root or something. Hopefully this will help you understand what I'm trying to put across here. Oh wow, this is interesting. Let's run another trace route here. So but this is very strange here. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to run www.unza.zm, all right? And I'm going to say geotrace route this. Hopefully this will make you, I don't know if you can see my screen here, but it's, I hope this works also. I don't know if you've noticed here, right? For some weird reason, right? I don't know what's happening here. This is very strange. You notice that the packet is originating somewhere in Zambia, but for some weird reason, right? I'm going to Europe, right? But why? I shouldn't be going to Europe here. And it's mostly due to how these network administrators will configure things here, right? Let's try and, or is it because this is originating from here? Maybe it's originating from, so maybe it's originating from France and going, this is weird here. May not work as, let's see, let's try facebook.com or something. It may not work. What I wanted to showcase is that for things that you're doing on a local area network, if you have a use case where most of the things you're doing, there we go. Most of the things that you're doing, if you notice here, I guess it's the origin is France, and then the Facebook server that I'm accessing is in Dublin somewhere, right? Which is interesting here. That's fine. Yeah, but so there are certain use cases where you would want things to be localized, depending on the resource, the network resource you are interested in accessing, like files, work files. Why do you want to go through the internet? You can set up a local area network so that it's faster. And I know most of us think like this. Well, I'm not the one paying the bill. It's the company, it's the government. So who cares if we're going through the internet? There are cost implications, right? Somebody's going to have to pay money, taxpayers here. They have to pay money for you to access a resource via the internet. Why do you have to do that? Why are we storing files on Dropbox when we have Infratel or something like that? But that's fine anyway. I hope that rant here helped you understand what it is we're discussing about local area networks. A very interesting field. We take so many things for granted in computing just because things work, right? All we have to do is we abstract all of these things, right? The only thing I have to do is make sure I have bundles and then I'll access this piece. The only thing I have to do is make sure that the desktop computer I'm using at work is connected to the network, and then I will access the management information system. But we forget that there's this complex ecosystem that exists, this communications infrastructure that exists, that enables us to access this information. Even better, the intricate details of how the data is transmitted are themselves complex, right? Your file, right? I want to download that report. That report is going to be broken up into smaller data packets. And then those smaller data packets will take various paths. Eventually, when they get through to your computer, they'll be assembled into one, right? And then boom, I have downloaded the report. And then you send it to, I don't know if it's a director or something, or a supervisor. I don't know. Listen, if there are no questions, again, maybe we can proceed with today's discussion, unless if there are any additional thoughts or people want clarification about communications infrastructure. But I believe that's enough for now anyway. Part of the reason why we're doing this, by the way, is very, very soon when we start looking at things like information needs analysis, these are things we take into account, right? Because if you're part of a group of individuals that are trying to identify the things that you need to have in place before you can have a management information system designed and implemented, or designed, implemented, and deployed so that you can use, there's certain core elements or core infrastructure that you need to have in place. There has to be hardware, we discussed. Oh, where's the server that we're going to deploy this management information system on? Software components, right? What operating system are we going to use? Oh, Windows Server operating system. Well, Windows Server operating system is not free, right? Windows Server OS prices, right? These things are not free. These are paid for. You pay you pay license fee here. In fact, the stuff we're discussing today to do with data sources, there are certain enterprise grade database management systems that are not free, huh? Like Oracle. Hey, what is this? I didn't realize that things were this expensive here, right? There we go. I guess with this government, it's fine, right? The taxpayers are there to pay this $6,000. I don't know if it's an annual thing here, right? Oracle database prices, right? You know, so all of these things that so you'll be part of a group that will be able to identify, well, we need to have this in place. We need to have this in place. We need to have this in place. In some instances, maybe the consultant will do this on your behalf, but you should be there to provide checks and balances, right? To verify that the consultant is not ripping you off as a company or as a government wing or department or something. You want to verify that they're not charging twice as much as they should be charging or something like that. But anyways, so today we are meant to start our discussion of this fourth missing piece, the final piece of the IT infrastructure. These are called, and I want us to move away from this word databases. For the most part, the primary type of data source, it's supposed to be a data source. The primary type or the most commonly used data source is a database, right? So you create a database, and this is what you use to store the data, right? If you remember, in our definition, we mentioned that our working definition of the management information system is it's an information system that is used to collect, summarize data, right? And somehow transform that data and additionally make it possible for you to be able to disseminate important information. So this could be by way of generating important reports. But we must be conscious of the fact that if we're saying we are collecting data and then at a later stage we need to report, we need to generate reports and extract information based on the data collected, then the obvious question is, well, where is this data we're collecting stored? Because it turns out that for you to be able to generate reports long after you've collected the data, that data has to be persistently stored somewhere. Hence, the need for a data source or a data store. Right? So in essence, this fourth technological infrastructure required is supposed to be a place that will facilitate the long-term storage of the data being collected. Not just the data being collected, because once the data is collected, you transform that data somehow, right? You aggregate it maybe. After you aggregate the data, the intermediate result has to be stored somewhere as well. This storage area is what we're referring to as a data store. All right. And as luck would have it, the most common type of data store in 2023, at least in the 21st century, is so-called database. All right. So organizations or entities will need to put in place mechanisms to facilitate this effective storage of data and information. Bearing in mind, by the way, that as you're storing this data, you must make sure that there are also mechanisms in place to ensure that the data is not compromised in any way, right? So it has to be secure. But also, in the event of a disaster, I want to be able to recover. We'll revisit these two important things here because these are important, right? If you are storing details about who is going to be paid money, one of the things you need to do is make sure that the place where you're storing these details, if you have a record for Lighton, say Lighton is going to be paid, I don't know if it's 300 kwacha this month. You don't want somebody else to get in and change Lighton's number, right? Lighton's number is 09613526662. Then some unauthorized user will log in and change that number to something else, right? Maybe a scammer's number or something, so that when those transactions are affected, Lighton does not receive the 300 kwacha, but that 300 kwacha is sent to a completely different number, right? Because somebody has gained illegal access to the data store. Those are things you have to take into account. So unauthorized access to data or something. We'll discuss all those important things here. These are very important concepts anyway, because you must think here, if you're saying that you have 1 million plus users on the social cash transfer program, nobody is employed to physically go through all those 1 million every month before you send money. Nobody is employed to check individually those 1 million records to say, is this a correct phone number? Is this a correct phone number, right? But you should have mechanisms in place to try and check for anomalies, yeah? So data needs to be safe. So in essence, this data store, what I'm trying to say is that it's not enough for this data store to just facilitate persistent storage of data, but it must be secure. It must be secure. Okay, can I kindly ask that this looks like one of those important calls. I do apologize here. Let me just tell them that I'm busy. I'll call them. Sorry about that. I could not. I think that was a very important call, but all calls are important, I guess. I don't know. Right. So there are these different things that you need to take into account, right? This is quite important, and also if you ever run into the problem that happened to NAPSA, I don't know if you heard about this, and I think I've mentioned this. If something like this was to happen to this piece, if let's say the data is somehow unauthorized users gain access to the database and they encrypt the database or something, you should be able to recover from that sort of disaster, right? So disaster recovery. So we'll discuss, why backups are important and, the processes we need to put in place. And by the way, I do hope that some of you will now appreciate why you have an IT department, or why your IT department will have a lot of people, right? In case you are wondering, why is it that these people in IT will have a lot of people in IT? What are they doing there, right? There's a lot that goes on here to ensure that some of these critical systems are safe. All right, but the key point here is that the summarized data, right, which is collected, has to be stored somewhere. Once stored in that somewhere, at a later stage, you will need to extract information. This information is extracted from the same data store. And the data store is, for the most part, a database management system. Again, just to emphasize this point relative to our reference to the this piece, if you remember, this is a sort of interface that you have, right? When you log in, you see these interesting statistics like, oh, these are the total number of beneficiaries we have. These are the total amount dispersed. I don't know if it's for a particular month or something. The pending payments are 314. All of this information that you are seeing here is dynamic. It's data-driven. It's stored somewhere in a data store, a database, or a database management system. Whenever you log in, depending on what sort of action you're performing, that information is retrieved from that source on the fly, on demand, right? When somebody makes a change, let's say, if you see that the total beneficiaries, if your current view says total beneficiaries are 480,726 beneficiaries, and someone somewhere, maybe in Chipat or something, or in Chadiza, enters or enrolls 10 additional beneficiaries, you will be able to immediately see the change reflect. Why? Because on the other side, the person who's doing the data entry is doing the data entry in the data store or the database that you are yourself using to extract this information. It's dynamic. If that makes sense or something. Hey, but also, one of the things that I guess we should, I was going to mention this, but I might as well say it. It turns out that this thing we are calling a database is just a file, right? Or they're files. They're like, it's similar to like a docx or something. But it's a special type of file because it stores information in a certain special way. Very important. And because it's a file, for you to be able to access this file, there's a specialized type of software that is used. A database management system. All right. So in effect, your this piece, this interface here is linked to a database management system, which in turn makes it possible for the data to be added, modified, deleted, or retrieved. All right. And maybe keep a record, a historical record of who is doing what, right? An audit trail or something. But anyway, so this data that we are seeing for this piece is dynamic. We know this, right? It gets even better because this view we are seeing right now, right, is mostly associated with information that has already been entered. But we must remember that at any given point in time, there's a number of things happening, right? In Chipata, in Chinzali, in Mongu, right? There are beneficiaries being enrolled. There are beneficiaries that have graduated. There are people that are keying in important information, right? Maybe the household has grown, so that information has to be updated somehow. So all of these different people in different parts of the country that have access to this management information system will be making these changes to the same data store or the same database. And you have access to this information on the fly. So again, just to reiterate here, as data is being collected, by, in this case, it would be like the Kobo toolbox component of this piece here, that information will be persisted into a database. All right. So that at a later stage, if you now wish to generate information about the newly enrolled beneficiaries, you will be accessing the same database that was used to add this new information, right? To extract that information, or the aggregated information in essence. It gets even better. We see that this piece has a feature that allows you to effect transactions, to pay beneficiaries, right? Using, I don't know if it's MTN or what. There's MTN Money here, Airtel Money, there's Bank ABC, I don't know, UBA, I don't know whose idea it was to include UBA here. There's Zona, right? What's happening here is when these transactions are effected, there has to be a record to say this beneficiary was paid. So it's automatically generated, right? Which is why you have this back and forth interaction between the mobile service payment gateway and I guess the this piece or something, right? COIMIS here. When that record is automatically generated, it has to be stored somewhere persistent. Why? Because at the end of the month, well, I don't know, maybe at the end of the year, auditors will come. They'll have to perform reconciliations, right? And I know auditors come here. This is what they like. Apparently, there are certain areas within government where there are a lot of these illegal things that happen, right? So auditors like visiting certain ministries here. And I'm sure they come to a ministry responsible for this piece here. I'm just speculating. Don't quote me on that one, right? But by the way, the key thing here is that all of these records have to be stored somewhere, right? Persistently. If anything, these things will always be there until such a stage when you decide to delete them. Usually there's a so-called retention period, right? They will say these records, there'll be policy in place to say these records need to be available at least for the next maybe 100 years or something. But typically retention period is anywhere between 5 and 10 years really. But because we know that within 5 years, auditing would have been performed, reconciliations would have been done or something like that. But the key thing here is that all of these things are persisted to a data store. A data store, which is a very key aspect of your information technology infrastructure. And so you are storing these transactions so that you can then generate reports about payments done. How much of this money here, this 673,300 kwacha, how much of this is from Western Province, Northern Province, Mchinga? In fact, because we know that this social protection management information system called ZISPIS can enable you to drill down to, is it a CWAC or something? Is that what they're called? I forget here. I think, is it a CWAC? What is it called? Experts in the room. Am I mistaken here? I think it's a CWAC it's called, right?
CWAC is correct.
Yeah, right? So a CWAC, and there we go, a Community Welfare Assistance Committee. So the thing with the CWAC, right? The thing with the CWAC is, this thing is something interesting that is happening here. They've mapped, you guys have mapped everything, right? Every corner of the country here. And the thing about, I don't know if I can find the maps I'm looking for here, but the thing about these CWACs is they have GPS coordinates, so you would know exactly which part of the country it's associated with, right? Or which chiefdom it's associated with. So you can go there and say, well, we want to see if the chiefdom that Lighton comes from, which is Chiefness Nyanje's chiefdom or something, right? If how much money was dispersed in that chiefdom or something, or which constituents had the most money or something, and then people will come in, no, it's because the current government or whatnot, and all those crazy things that people speculation, I guess. But the thing here is that you are able to extract that important information because it persists somewhere. It's being stored persistently, permanently. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully this is a good enough introduction. So all this rant here was an introduction of the importance of a data store when you're talking about a management information system. Why it's important for us to persistently store information. The obvious question to ask is, so then if we now know why it's important for us to persistently store information, then how do we persistently store this information? All right. Well, it turns out really that depending on the type of information you're storing, in some instances, you can literally just store the information on flat files, right, on a file system. Just like you store information on your computer in folders here, you can store that information like this, right? So you come here, like if you look at how Lighton stores information in Dropbox, for instance, you can store this information like this as well. The obvious question to ask here is, excuse me, is this really efficient? Is this an efficient way of storing information? How easy is it to extract the information we want, right? Yeah, so you can store this information in an unstructured manner, like on your file system, right? This diagram is just showcasing a records management system, by the way. In some instances, you can't get away from the fact that you can just literally, you'd have to literally store information on a flat file. But for related information, like information typically handled by management information system, your best bet is to use a database management system, right? So in essence, this data store we are calling a database management system, we are saying is one of the most commonly used data stores, right? When setting up, when designing, when building a management information system. The reason it's the most commonly used type of data store is because it provides mechanisms for efficient retrieval of data that is stored. Because one of the reasons why you are storing data in this management information system, now we're calling this database, I guess, is so that you can retrieve that information, so that you can generate reports, so you can extract important information. You'll be able to efficiently and effectively extract that information because there's different types of information, right? If you use a database management system. And it turns out that you are better off organizing this information in a structured manner, not in an unstructured manner. So this information has to be related somehow. There's relationships that exist between the different bits and pieces of information. Now, I'll draw attention here to, let's look at this diagram here, right? If you look at the type of information you'd be storing in a social protection management information system like ZISPIS, right? For managing programs such as the social cash transfer program, you know that at some point you have to generate beneficiary details. You have to store household details, transaction details. I don't know what else here you'd be storing, right? Let's see, beneficiary, yeah, program details, right? Because social cash transfer is not only a program you'd be running. So the question to ask, the point to note before you start asking questions is that all of this information is collected at different times. Like when you initially set up a social protection management information system, in all likelihood, the first information you add is static information about the different programs that you add. So you say, oh, we have a social cash transfer program, and the details about that program are there'll be like a program ID, there'll be like a program name, right? Program details. There'll be things like we're just simplifying this, right? Transaction amount, right, for that particular program. This can be complex because it depends on whether somebody is expecting, whether somebody is not able-bodied, whether they're elderly, right? But we're simplifying things. We know that. We're just simplifying things. So the key thing is you'd have to enter details about the programs. Social cash transfer is not the only program here. There could be other programs. We don't know which programs these are here, but that's okay. When you enter this information, at some point, you have field workers. They'll go into the field and they'll start collecting details about, oh, they're trying to collect details about Lighton because it's a potential beneficiary here, right? So you have beneficiary ID, right? So I'll have a unique ID. I don't know what IDs you use in the ministry, but we have a discussion about IDs because these are important, right? They have to be unique. Anyway, you have a beneficiary name, right? You have to specify the household that the beneficiary belongs to. Maybe the beneficiary, well, you need to keep track of the date of birth, right? The beneficiary location. Which CWAC am I located in? Now, I want to pause here, right, and draw attention to something that's important here. You immediately realize that, okay, also here, I'll say, I'll add program ID, because the reason you are collecting beneficiary details is you want to enroll these people in some existing program, maybe in a social cash transfer program. So when you're entering Lighton's details using COBO2 box, these details have to be entered in the database. One of the important bits and pieces of information you're going to have to enter is the details of the program. Now, the approach we could take is you could replicate this same information you have here, program ID, program name, program details, transaction amount. You can collect them together with this information you're collecting about Lighton, but that's redundant, right? What makes sense is you just specify to say the program ID that is linked to this beneficiary called Lighton is maybe ID number 1, which is a short cash transfer program. And internally, there's a mechanism in place that makes it possible for you to link this information here with this information that is here. And we see that we can do the same thing for transaction details, yeah? Because every time you're paying Lighton, that 300 kwacha per month is sad here, right? 0.33 cents. You have to specify to say this transaction ID. This transaction ID is in fact linked to a particular program, right? That Lighton is enrolled into. All of the bottom line here is that if you look at a tip, if you irrespective of a type of management information system you're talking about, really, the information that you collect is diverse. It's diverse, it's interlinked. And because it's interlinked, when you're generating information, you won't be able to generate any meaningful information by just generating information about these individual entities of data, right? I mean, you'll be able to generate information from beneficiary details, right? Like how many beneficiaries do we have, for instance? But interesting information like which beneficiaries were paid in the month of July 2023. You can only generate this information if you link information about beneficiary details and transaction details. Which beneficiaries from Sinda district or from Chiefness Nyanje chiefdom were actually paid. You can only generate that information if you interlink the various bits of information that have already been collected here. Anyways, I hope that's enough information to help you appreciate, to say, the information, right, that you typically store in a management information system has to be structured. And because it has to be structured or needs to be related in a certain way, I don't know what, well, is that a notification? I don't know if there's a hand up, but I don't know if you heard that. I thought I heard something, but I don't know if that was a hand up. No, not a hand up. Okay. So the point is, because this information is supposed to be structured, your best bet is to use a relational database management system. I mean, you could, good luck doing this, but you could decide to say, well, we are going to create files for each of the 1 million users. For each user, we'll create a flat file where we'll be entering the details. It's like you're saying, well, we'll have maybe a spreadsheet, or let's say flat file like this, a text file. And for each flat file, we'll have details to do with the beneficiary's Lighton period, right? The beneficiary ID is this or something. I'm just using like randomly generate ID, like NRC could be any other ID here. What else are we doing? Well, the location for, or the location for, I guess, the date of birth for Lighton, right? The location for Lighton is Sinda or something. And there's a reason I'm doing this. Chiefdom is Nyanja or something like that. So the thing is, you can collect, and then you say July 2023, you'll be updating this file, say July 2023, Lighton got paid 300 kwacha. June 2023, Lighton got paid 300 kwacha or something like that. Yeah. And then you have maybe status is eligible, something like that. With this approach, what you'd have to do is you'd have to create a file that has this sort of information 1 million plus times, because each beneficiary would have to have a separate file. And you soon discover, when you start looking at the disadvantage of doing this, that when you want to update things like, and we see this, right? See Sinda district, well, that's a village here. We see that, and this is a good example here. Now, in my, I must say this, in my culture, I belong to my mother's family for obvious reasons, I guess. But so this village is from my mother's side, right? The interesting thing about this village is, before the boundaries were changed, this village was in Petauke district. But now that the boundaries have changed, it's in Sinda district. If before this record at Petauke, what we would have had to do is, each file that has a district of Petauke would have to be individually changed to Sinda. So if, let's say, well, maybe for like 50,000 records are from this same village, then you'd have to change that thing 50 times, right? Each of those 50 files would have to be changed. Redundancy, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, this is, it's an approach you could take, but it's suboptimal is a word. Hence the need for a database management system. And don't worry, we'll make it clear for you to understand this. I'm going to pause here just to, before we maybe look at some explicit disadvantages of an approach where you're using like files as opposed to a database management system to manage such type of data, structured data. Any thoughts about this, or comments that people may have, I suppose? Is this I know there was a time when there was a comment from somebody that oh, this is too technical. It was the delivery was done at a very technical level. I hope this is not very technical. I'm trying as much as possible to make sure that you understand this. Any thoughts about this? Any comment? It would be nice if I think I've talked we've been talking about an hour here. I'm interested in comments or thoughts about this.
Just to say we are following, Doc.
Okay, that's good. But you've I imagine most of you in here now, if you've done a basic computing course before we continue this discussion of database management system, if you've done a basic Microsoft Office course, like a short course or something, or a tutorial, they have likely taught you MS Excel, MS Word, MS PowerPoint. I hope they also taught you MS Access. Access is a database management system. Specifically, Access is a relational database management system. It's perfect. Well, it's perfect for storing information similar to what you'd be storing in a management information system. Now, you wouldn't want to use Access to store data for 1 million users. You need something that's more robust and scalable, like Oracle, like MS MySQL, like MariaDB, right? Like PostgreSQL, or like Microsoft SQL Server or something like that. I thought I would hint at the fact that what we're discussing is specific data store called the database management system. Our focus is going to be a relational database management system. Is anything that is similar to Access. Essentially, you model this database, you create it in such a way that there are relationships that exist between the different pieces of data that you're storing. But anyways, it turns out that before the advent of so-called database management systems, data was actually stored in a traditional manner, right? So you'd have separate records similar to what you're seeing on the screen here, similar to what you see in hospitals or places where you have paper-based records, right? You go to a hospital, they open a book for you where your details will be there, your date of birth, and every time you see a doctor, it will be updated, is it? The book will be updated. That works, right? In fact, this is how your file-based systems that were used before relational database management system would be used, right? So every time you need to update information in that record, you just go to the record and you change, right? So if, let's say, your name changes because you've gotten married and you want to include both your maiden name and I guess your new name here, you hyphenize it. Somebody would have to log into the system and change your record. If this is like a record associated with social cash transfer here, and Lighton has moved from Sinda to Lusaka now, maybe Chongo or something. Okay, Rufunsa, I guess. I don't know, it's a bit remote. The address would have to be changed. If Lighton's household increases because he has a child now, you have to change the record, right? You begin to realize that it becomes too cumbersome for you to individually change certain types of records, right? File-based systems are problematic like that, especially in instances when information scales, when you're dealing with millions of records, millions of transactions. Yes, it works if you have a file-based system where you're managing 20 student records. That's fine. You can use the file-based system. But the moment you start dealing with millions of user records, it becomes a bit of an issue here. Yeah. Specifically, hey, I wanted to just pause here. I do apologize. I just remembered I should have done this a while back here. I do apologize that I have to tell this person here. Sorry for that, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just physically. Sorry about that. I needed to. I should have. I thought I sent this. I just realized I didn't send this message then. But anyway, that was a nice way of pausing. So there are obvious disadvantages, right, with you storing information in an unstructured manner, right, or in file systems, or using a file-based system. It becomes difficult for you to isolate or to separate data. I want to use. I'll use an example that you may be familiar with, and then we can try and see if we can find an example similar to social protection management information system. If you go to the hospital and they're using a file-based system, and maybe you have a disease that you wouldn't want other people to know about, right? Confidentiality is key in a hospital setting, we know this. But because this information is stored in this hospital record, any person who has that record will know. Even the nurses, right? Even if the nurses are not supposed to have access to that information, they'll know, right? So isolating data becomes difficult. In some instances, maybe payment-specific details would need to be restricted somehow, right? The amount of money that people are paying or something, for whatever reason. It becomes difficult when you're using this sort of file system because everything is accessible to whoever has access to that record. The same goes to this social protection management information system. If you look at the social cash transfer program, I know that some of you probably work in roles where you don't have access to payment details, right? So you might not know, say, Lighton got paid 300 kwacha in the month of July. You won't have access to that information. But if you are using a file-based system, well, as long as you have access to the record, you will have access to that information. So isolation of data becomes an issue. Duplication of data becomes commonplace. Here's the thing, right? If you think about it, I'm trying to see if I can find an example here. Right. For a social cash transfer program, right? If let's say, I don't know where this is here. Here. Let's say Lighton has a record, right? Like this. And Lighton's details have details to do with where he's located, the village, the CWAC, the chiefdom, his payment transactions and whatnot. What if Lighton's brother, right, equally is on the program itself and is in the same village or something? Of course, I mean, maybe the NRC or the ID is different here. You begin to realize here that, wait a minute, we have duplicate data here, right? Lighton's record has this village name, right, and whatnot. These are duplicates. The problem with duplicates is when you're doing this at scale, duplicates will mean that you have to do things multiple times. There's redundancy. That's one. But also there are cost implications. Because you're storing duplicate data, you end up eating up a lot of space. The workaround for relational database management systems is you'd say, instead of, look at this, for a relational database management system, in fact, all my three siblings could perhaps be beneficial of the social cash transfer program, would have to store duplicate records for all four of us. But if you use a structured approach, you could just say here, you could just say CWAC ID. And here as well, you could just say CWAC ID. And Joshua was born in 1989. Yeah. When you do this, all you do is you have a single record here called location or something, where you have CWAC ID, you have chiefdom, you have district, you have province, right? And so if the CWAC for Nyanje ID is 1, chiefdom is Nyanje, and district is Sinda, and province is Eastern, we see that we are avoiding redundancy, because all we need to do in Lighton's record is we just say Lighton is located in CWAC ID 1. The moment you link CWAC ID 1 here, you know that Lighton is associated with Nyanje, with Sinda, with Eastern Province. The same applies to Joshua here. Redundancy is the disadvantage here, duplicate data. And usually this duplication of data becomes problematic because updating information becomes challenging. Every time you need to update changes to do with Sinda, you have to update all records that have Sinda. Problem right there. If boundaries change, all the 50,000 records that have that Sinda district or that CWAC will have to change or something. If the CWAC, the group comprising of the community that handle grievances and that seeks to identify eligible people changes, you have to update all the records, right? Which makes little sense here. I mean, it works for small data sets or small records, but the moment you're dealing with millions of entries here, it becomes a bit of an issue. And I've already mentioned this point here, the fact that there's a lot of data dependencies. Changes are difficult to make, right? The fact that you have to make these changes in numerous locations here. And also, from the perspective of extracting important information, we see that it becomes problematic for us to extract information we want. Like if I wanted to say how many people are in Sinda, I would have to read information from all these different files to do with me and to do with Lighton's record and Joshua's record, ideally. So it turns out that the database-based approach really is a workaround, it's a potential workaround to this problem, right? Because the advantages are, well, the disadvantages really are the direct mirrors of the advantage of databases, right? We will soon see that you can easily access information you want by just using simple queries. But also, manipulating the data or making changes becomes a trivial process because there's a cascading effect that takes place. You make a change once, and that change is going to reflect to all the other affected records that are linked to where that change is being made. And then, of course, the definition of the data is incorporated within the application, right? You don't store it separately. So you soon see when we discuss data definition languages that when you're creating the database, that definition will persist together with the data that you're storing in the database. I say this is 1518. I'm going to suggest that we can continue this discussion tomorrow. I'll let you think about this. This is enough for today. I'll pause to see if there are any questions. Any thoughts? All right. If there are no questions, thank you very much for this. I said I was going to pause here because I see people were at 11 here. So I will see you tomorrow when we continue this discussion. They want to flood us with a lot of concepts here. Hopefully you get a chance to reflect on what we've discussed before we actually get to start discussing databases in depth. Thank you very much, and good day.